This is Earnings Preview, a look at companies reporting during the week, along with companies which may have positive or negative earnings surprises. This earnings preview is for the week of June the 15th through the 21st. Charles Rotblatt here once again, our senior market analyst at Zacks.com, to preview this week for us and preview a few things, not just earnings here, but let's start with earnings. This is really the week that we get to see just a little dribbling of initial second quarter earnings numbers, right?
Yeah, we had a couple reports. As we record this, we actually just had a national semiconductor report. I believe it was Thursday, June 11th. But really, the first batch of true first batch of second quarter reports is really coming out next week. We have 5 companies reporting. Notably, the investment bankers would have been reporting this week. Obviously, some of them have either gone bankrupt or been merged out of existence. The other 2 big ones are now on traditional calendar quarters, so we're no longer seeing them in that first group of early reports. But we do have some companies reporting. Even though we do have 5 S&P 500 companies reporting, it's worth noting it will be a light week for earnings. We only have 23 companies total scheduled to announce profits next week.
What are you looking for Q2 as far as earnings are concerned?
You know, I think there'll actually, again, be another case where the numbers are better than expected and probably better than feared. As we went through the quarter, we actually did see economic conditions improve. We have seen analysts actually raise their full-year projections throughout the quarter. So I think it should be relative to expectations, I do think it should be a decent quarter. Unfortunately, it's still going to be tough. We're still in a recession, and I do think the comments and the numbers we see from the companies will suggest that we are still in a recession and that growth has not returned to the markets.
But at one point, in order for even the stock market to move forward, we are going to have to start seeing earnings and revenue growth, correct?
Yeah, at some point, and I think right now what people are really looking for is a return of visibility. We need to see that first and really sense that things have stabilized and that there is starting to be that turn towards growth. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. Certain industries, we are starting to see initial signs of it. Other industries are struggling. And so I think it will vary by industry, but there's a lot of expectation built into the second half of the year, and it will be interesting to see just how comfortable some of these companies feel in making statements about what the second half of the year will look like.
Well, the economic calendar is busy this week, as you point out here. We have housing starts for May, we have building permits, we have the May CPI, weekly crude inventories, and the list goes on.
Yeah, it will be a busy week, and we'll get a lot of data. I do expect it to show that general trend of the pace of deterioration slowing on there. Housing data we'll get some look at. Not really, I don't think the numbers are probably good enough to reflect a recent uptick in mortgage rates, so we have to consider this will be somewhat aged data. With the producer and consumer price index, be interesting to see just what kind of impact the commodities rally had on the headline numbers. Again, with oil hitting $73 a barrel, that won't be reflected in these numbers. We'll still have to wait another month. But we'll have to see how that kind of plays out itself in there. Again, we're just looking for that general trend of things gradually getting better relative to where they were a couple of months ago. Not looking for growth. Are these numbers to signal we've turned a corner and everything's back to rosy? We're just looking for that gradual pace of improvement. And if we get that, that should be a positive for the markets overall.
And as if that weren't enough, Friday of this week is quadruple witching day. So probably a lot of volatility in the market on that day.
Possibly. We haven't seen as much volatility over the past few months with quadruple witching as we've had in the past. However, it could lead to more volatility. It could lead to higher volume. What should be interesting is we will have that occurring. At the same time, we're looking at a lot of fund managers who have really sat outside the markets, really sat on the sidelines, and relative to their benchmarks, I'd really have to say that they're probably underperforming. I know I've been in a bear camp. A lot of fund managers have been. And the reality is the worst case scenario hasn't happened. The correction many of us were expecting, including me, has not happened either. And so I do think you'll see some of these fund managers realizing they need to do some end of quarter moves to make the portfolios look a little bit better by having some of the quote unquote good stocks, meaning some of the more momentum stocks or some of the stocks actually starting to show growth in their portfolio. So at least it looks like they're aware of what's going on and trying to make some moves accordingly.
So you look for a lot of end of the quarter window dressing here?
I think it could happen, and it should be interesting to see whether or not that actually kicks in. We have seen light volume, and volume has stayed light. And so it'll be interesting to see whether that volume picks up a little bit. It's not guaranteed that that will happen, but that's my guess is we will see some managers actually stepping into some of the better performing names and trying to buy them, if only to say, yes, I have a position in the stock, or I have a position in that hot stock.
Right. One thing that we know for sure has happened is that in this text version of this preview, Charles has put 2 companies that he feels could surprise to the upside, and at least one that he thinks might surprise to the downside. You'll want to go to Zacks.com and click on the headline right next to Charles' picture to get that information, especially if you're accessing this video outside of Zacks.com. With Charles Rotblatt, I'm Terry Ruffalo.